Welcome to the Potential Success Show. My name is Fong, and today we have another great guest. He comes highly recommended by a lot of people all around the world, and also a lot of guests that I've had has also asked me to get Norman on here. He has over 4 decades of experience working and helping CEOs identify barriers, helping them with flawless execution, and of course, designing pathways to sustainable success. He's been able to work with Fortune 500 companies, corporations, startups, one of which he was a senior executive for Hewlett Packard, turning around successfully a $1.2 billion operation. He's been able to lead transformative initiatives that bridge strategy, performance, and also purpose to unlocking extraordinary performances, mainly because he's able to implement practical business insight and also deep systems thinking. He is the author of the book The Living Organization. So please welcome founder and CEO of Quantum Leaders Inc., Mr. Norman Wolfe.
Thank you, Fong. That was lovely. I'm glad to be here. It's really an honor to share my insights, as you say, with your audience. I look
Oh, thank
forward to
you.
our
Thank you
conversation.
very much for being here. It's always a pleasure speaking with somebody of your stature. We'll jump right into it. How did you become this amazing leader, amazing person who's able to help people really reorganize their organization and become more and more successful? How did you get there?
Well, I guess it started with my very first year as manager. I was very successful as a systems engineer for Hewlett Packard in the sales region. That success led them to offer me the opportunity to become a service manager. Or my first management job was leading a service district. The interesting thing about that is I didn't know anything about repairing computers. I knew all about programming them. So here I am, a leader of an organization of people that I didn't really know how to do what they did. Um, I like to say that my life was changed by that. My first year as a manager, my performance review was unacceptable in every category.
Oh, wow.
And so I had a choice, right? As we all often do. I had a choice of going back to being a technical guy, which I was very good at, or figure out what this thing called leadership and management and performance, or how do you get a collective of people to work in a way that produces the results the organization needs to produce. 15 years with HP, as you mentioned, my last job, turning around a $1.2 billion administrative organization for the sales region. And so I learned a few things along the way. What is an organization? And how do you get a collective of people to produce what the organization needs for sustainable success? After at HP, I went out and took the experiences I had and started to work with a whole variety of companies as a consultant. I figured time to get into the cruel ocean of entrepreneurship, leave the security of the big mothership of corporation and see what life was like out here. And so 38 years later now, I've been working with companies of all sizes, doing all sorts of things. It was around 2001, 2002 when I began to focus on this issue of what's often called strategy execution. I always was focused on how does organizations perform, but I began to realize and discover that 70% of companies fail to execute their strategy. And that got me really curious because if you think about that in the context of all the wisdom that's been out, books and the authors, um, Jim Collins, Tom Peters, Daniel Pink, Amy Edmondson, um, Patrick Lancioni. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. We have all the knowledge necessary. So why over the last 3, 4 decades has the statistic for success haven't changed? 70% failures. Um, so I began to look at that and discovered that we're caught in what I call a paradigm trap. We have a view of what an organization is that sets it up as a black box that takes inputs and produces outputs. And that black box, like a machine, is designed for efficient flow of conversion of inputs to outputs. And everything inside a black box is just another component to the machine. And the leader's role is to design that machine for efficiency and ideally predictability, and because we all like certainty as much as possible, which relegates people to nothing more than component parts. And people don't like being treated like cogs in the wheel. We've heard that for
Yeah,
centuries now, or decades at least. And so the paradigm is wrong. That's what I concluded, the way we frame it. And my book, The Living Organization, and the new one coming out, Leading the Living Organization, which will be out September 1st, it reframes that paradigm. It says, let's look at what an organization really is. It's a collective of people that come together for a common purpose, operates as if it's a single person. And so, what does that mean for leadership, and what does that mean for the organization, and what does that mean for execution? Is the foundation of all my work now.
that is awesome. I want to bring you back to that very first segment that you talked about, where everything, like you basically failed your very first experience as a manager. Now, lots of people go, well, I guess this isn't meant for me, and they go back to their technical. What was it that made you go, you know what, I'm gonna do more. I'm gonna work harder. I'm gonna learn more so that I am gonna become that manager that you wanted to be. Like, what kept you going?
Well, I don't like failing at anything. And I had some encouragement. I remember the general manager of the sales region took me out to lunch right after that. And he said, Norman, I know you've been struggling, but we see signs in you that we think you should stick with it. So that was, that with the desire to just overcome whatever challenges I have. I don't know where that comes from, but my whole life I've always worked to overcome whatever challenges I've had and learned from them. And so the encouragement from the general manager and others, and my desire to get better, made me take a look at it. And one of the things that I guess, as I look back over my life, as a systems engineer, I learned to take apart complex systems and understand how they work and put them back together in hopefully a more effective way. In a lot of ways, that's what I did to learn how to be management, be a good leader. I began to ask the question, what does it mean to lead people? And what causes them to behave the way they did? And what causes a collective, a team or a department or an organization as a whole, what causes them to behave the way they do? Um, so I explored it in lots of different ways, from leadership and business and motivation to psychology and sociology, and well, as many different fields that gave me insight into this complex system. That's that's what led me to do it. Just curiosity and a desire to be successful.
I'm going to give your general manager a lot of credit for seeing that potential in you, and then also for not giving up. Like lots like normally they'll give you a review and let you have your way kind of thing, right? But this person actually went, okay, let's kind of work at it. Now, when it comes to being a leader, a lot of that is the people skills, the speaking, the communications, the relationships and whatnot. What was one thing that you go, okay, this is one of the biggest things I need to improve on? The connecting with people or the public speaking or the kind of the listening skills. What was it that you really focused on first?
Wow. I don't think it actually was that logical or rational, to tell you the truth. It sort of evolved. In other words, I didn't have a plan that said this is the thing I need to develop. But you're correct when you say that this, I would say the most important skill that I learned over the years is what I would call connecting. The we live in a society that has for probably a couple of hundred years now really valued the intellect,
Mm,
right? Everything we like to, even the systems in the engineer, break it down into its component parts and figure out how it works, and then put it back together. Well, there's kind of a set of things, but they're not all logical, right? There's this irrational part of us, this emotional part of us, this set of belief systems that we have that we've developed over years through our experiences, and we kind of create this, call it internal operating system. I call it the psychic DNA, that when something happens, I know how to respond to it, right? I know how to behave accordingly. That gives me what I'm hopefully will get. Um, that makes us very efficient, but but at the end of the day, as a leader, I've got to learn how to connect with people at a deeper level than just their minds. And not everything is KPI driven and logic and let's go get them guys and this is our goals, let's achieve them, rah rah. People are much more complex than that. And so learning the art and the skill of connecting and a lot of that has to do with incorporating not only the head but the heart. Right. You gotta feel people, you gotta sense things, you gotta intuit things, you gotta inspire people, and that doesn't come from a logical, rational mind. You mentioned public speaking. If you listen to all the great public speakers, they have a degree of presence and vulnerability about them. They open themselves up and they connect with the audience. Those are really great public speakers, and so you need that as a leader. So those are some of the core skills you need is that I've learned over the years.
Very, very true. And like speaking with a lot of other business CEOs and very successful individuals, their companies are nothing without the people. And it's when the people are engaged, when their employees are in line with what their goals and what their dreams are, then that's when your company can grow. Now, you worked with a company that it was world renowned. Hewlett Packard, everybody knows that company. What was some of the things that you've implemented with the employees and the people in that company that helped turn around a $1.2 billion place?
Y- You know, um, I think the biggest thing I did was I shifted from a what I would call a compliance orientation to a contribution and commitment orientation. And let me explain that. In most organizations, and at HP when I took it over, I was in charge of the admin organization. So the admin organization supported all the sales and service and systems engineering folks in the region. And the admin organization was a completely separate organization. So you have to understand the structure a little bit. We reported up through the corporate chain, not through the same chain of the people we supported, right? So the only place those two command lines, if you will, those chains of command came together was as the CEO John Young's position. So here's the admin organization with a set of goals and objectives, mostly around efficiency, speed of processing, accuracy. And here's the sales organization whose goals are increased sales, customer relations, and so forth,
Yeah.
right? And we're supposed to support them, but our metrics and our goals are very different. So first thing I did was I went out and I spoke to all of the regional sales managers and systems engineering managers. Now we had a number of different product lines. We had the components, the test and measurement, the computer group, calculator group. So we had very various product lines. So we had sales departments for all of that. And my organization was supporting all of those various sales groups, and they all had their own different objectives. So first thing I did was went out and I establish what do my customers want. Now, I didn't view corporate as my customer. I viewed the people I served as my customer. So that was the first change that I made in my own thinking. And then, of course, I had to cascade that reorientation, that reframing of why we're here down throughout the organization. The other thing I did was the organization had grown up with a lot of command and control orientation, right? So pretty much the branch manager's responsibility was to follow the procedures that were established at region. And if they were going to deviate, they always had to come down to back to region for approval. I thought that was really silly. I mean, I'm not out there in the branch operations. How am I going to make a decision about what's happening between order processing and the salesperson? I can't decide whether they should. So I set out to empower, to use that term. But empowerment is really an interesting term when you think about it. To empower somebody, you have to give them the ability to make choices that affect their lives. I can't tell them what to do and empower them. That's inconsistent. If they don't have choice, about how they're going to operate and the decisions they're going to make, they can't be empowered. They're basically a victim to my choices, if you will, if I can use that term. And so the first thing I had to do was basically give them the freedom to make choices. Now, you can't make choices ad infinitum. I had 17 branch offices. I had 1,300 people. I had to give them some guidance. So I established what I would call the guide rails, the ground rules. But within those, make choices.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of some of the decisions I had to make. We had one branch manager who called me up and said, Norman, we've got this sales situation and they want me to process the order, but I don't have the order signed by the client yet, but they want to get the order in time. And I just asked the branch manager, I said, why do we look for the paperwork to support before we process the order? I wanted to evaluate his thinking. Does he understand the objectives we're trying to achieve, what the boundary conditions are? And then within that, he can decide on his own whether he meets it or not. And his his response to me was, Norman, just tell me what to do. Can I do it or not? And I said, well, if you're going to ask me, the answer is no. And what that indicated to me was he was not the kind of branch manager that could take on this new level of responsibility. We found him a new home someplace else, and we brought somebody else in. But I think there's a notion in business around empowerment, and there's also this concept of you can't delegate into a void. So the leader has to be able to evaluate their employees on where are they in what I call the maturity spectrum. How much can they make? It's like raising a child, right? You're going to decide whether your 16-year-old, 17-year-old is ready to drive on their own or they still need supervision, right? And you're going to evaluate them based on some criteria. But the goal is to get them to where they can make those decisions on their own. It's not that I want to keep telling them what to do because when they get to 25 years old, they're going to still live in my basement, and I don't want that, right? So it's the same pattern, it's the same way to think about an organization. How do I develop the maturity of it so that they can make decisions on their own, which frees me up and it allows the organization to be much more resilient and responsive to the organization. Those are the kind of things I did throughout the 3 years that it took me to turn around the organization. I kept encouraging them. And what I ended up with is not people who complied with the directions I was giving them, but people who were uh, contributing and committed to the success of the organization because they understood what that meant and they knew how to contribute to that. And that's what I'm always looking for.
Yeah, that's very, very impressive. And totally agreed. Like you never know what your people can actually accomplish if you don't give them the opportunities to actually accomplish anything. And most people are able to think on their own and come up with solutions. So without that opportunity, they can't showcase it. And what's very beautiful about that is that those who take the opportunity to make those decisions will actually rise up, and those are your future leaders. Those are your future
Right.
managers that can
Right.
then carry on the kind of the mindset and the operations and stuff. Now,
I,
when you jump into something like this and you're going, okay, let's change this, let's do this, let's think this differently. There's always a few or a group of individuals that goes, hey, we've been doing this way for so long. Why are we
yeah.
changing? Like, how do
Yeah.
you navigate through those situations?
It goes to what I was talking about earlier, sort of this psychic DNA I mentioned earlier, this way that we operate, which we translate into this is the way we've always done it around here, right? But there's a reason why they've done that. And so what I work on with clients is to understand why are they behaving this way? How do they view the choices they're making? And it usually comes down to some sort of belief system they have that they've gotten used to as the definition of success. And let me give you a simple example. I was working with um, I've got two examples. I was working with one client, and just to give you a background, they were a sole source supplier to the United States government on high and high level, high end security algorithms. And they were well known for the elegance of their solutions. And so the engineering department viewed their job and their sense of identity as we're the best at producing elegant solutions to these cryptographic problems that the government has. Well, as they grew, the environment changed. And the environment now was more competitive. They were competing with some of the bigger companies like Raytheon and Lockheed and Marietta and so forth. And in the past, engineers would define what they needed from the client, and the business development would go get that amount of money. That's let's call that the context of how the whole organization worked. But now the business development people are coming back saying, we can't do that anymore. And the engineers are going, but we're all about providing the elegant solutions. That's our purpose in life. So we had to reframe that, right? And I'm simplifying. There's a whole process of how you get there. But what we did was we changed the narrative. We said, okay, you're the best engineers, or so you claim. But any good engineer, I mean, just any average engineer, given that infinite resources, can develop really elegant solutions. Only the best engineers can develop within a constrained budget. So you see how you did? I did the same thing with the sales department, who was oriented towards being the best at they were inbound. They were calls were coming, they were inbound salespeople, right? They were responding to sales calls. So for them, picking up the call, getting the order and getting off the line to get the next call was the most important thing. That's how they define success. But now we were asking them to upsell and to look for new customers and not just always be on the phone taking orders, but spend time going out. Well, that was inconsistent with how they viewed their success. So we had to change the narrative. It goes beyond just your typical change management. It's getting into the psychic DNA, into that context to understand how the collective is operating. And then you morph that and you give them a new story with new success that's tied into the outcomes you want. And then you've got the behaviors you want.
Very, very cool. I mean, reframing that story that you shared there by making it a challenge and kind of go, well, if you're so good, show me kind of thing, right? Um, so after many years at Hewlett Packard, you decided to go away from the corporate, go on your own. What was the biggest life lesson there? Like, what was the aha moment or failure that you experienced that goes, maybe this isn't what I thought it was, but I'm still gonna keep on going.
Um, the ups and down swings of inconsistent income. When you're working for somebody, you've got the consistency of a paycheck. It provides a sense of security, but to some degrees, false security, because in the corporate world, I'm dependent on my bosses. I have to please them. They now become my gatekeepers into my future, if you will. And so I learned this game of doing what they want. It's almost like, back in schools, the education system has always been criticized for teaching to the test. The goal is to get the kids to pass the test, and the kids learn how to pass the test, right? And so we learn how to study. And then after the test is over, I forgot everything I learned, right? Because it doesn't matter anymore. Well, business is sort of the same way. It's the same pattern unfolds. You got employees who understand what they need to just get by, if you will. And so that's sort of the game we've learned to play. But I do that for the security of getting, a standard paycheck, and I can budget to that, and I can live off that, and so forth. Um, when you're out on your own, you don't have that. Right. You don't have that security. But when you learn what I learned, and the biggest lesson that I had to go through was I have a sense of autonomy in that environment. I'm my own agent. Um, I remember I was about 40 years old. It was just before I left HP, actually. Um, I was celebrating my 40th birthday and reflecting back on my life and realized that so much of my life was governed by what my parents told me to do, and then what my parents guided me to do, and then sort of the script I got from my growing up years about how I should live my life. And here I am 40 now with 40 years of experience and going, I can do anything I want. And then the very thought after that is, oh my God, I choose, but I'm the only one that can be blamed for success or failure. I can't blame my parents. I can't blame my boss. I can't blame anybody. So that shift in being able to handle the beauty of autonomy and agency with the responsibility that goes with it. You have to accept your uh, accountability for your own actions. It's what I call the process of maturity. That was the biggest lessons I learned was how to accept that joy and challenge of being my own boss. Right?
Right. No, there's a lot of people out there who goes, you know what? In order for me to jump out of this world and be successful in this world, I need to burn all my bridges. I don't want to have anything to fall back on. Is that your strategy, or did you kind of ease your way into it?
Uh, I didn't burn my bridges, but I did jump. A friend of mine said, when he went out and started his own company, he had a very, he kept his job and his partner went out and did it, and he supported both of them. He said, Norman, you went out and you didn't have a base camp to come back to. You just went out there. That's not 100% true. I had a plan. When I left, I sat down and they did a budget and I figured, okay, I've got 12 months. I can survive, probably stretch it to 18 if I was really careful. So I had some sort of stability plan in mind. And I said, if I don't get a first client within the 6, 9 months, I'm going to start recruiting. And I think it was in month 10 maybe month 8, I got my first client. So it was okay. Uh, but there's a lot of ups and downs. I'll tell you, my previous wife I couldn't handle that kind of entrepreneurial uncertainty. She needed certainty. And it's one of the reasons we ended up separating. She loved the idea of it, the excitement of it, but she didn't couldn't handle that. Uh, Next month we're going to have a huge income stream, and the month after that we're going to have to figure it out. And so it's not for everybody. I mean, I acknowledge that. But it was for me, and here I am 38 years later still consulting. So
That
it
is
works.
awesome. Now, I know you work with a lot of different companies, Fortune 500 corporations, startups, and you also mentioned before that most companies don't follow through with their plan. They don't follow through with their original kind of goals and whatnot. Why is that? Why set all that stuff up if majority of them don't actually follow through?
It has to do is there's a couple of things. First of all, if you step back and think about what an organization is, it 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 grows. Again, I draw parallels to individuals because for me, an organization operates just like an individual does. So just imagine you go through your life, you kind of get things organized, you get things settled, you know how to behave, you know how to work, you got your routine, everything's flowing along really well. And then something comes along, say COVID, and all of a sudden your routine is upset, right? And now everything changes. That's not very easy for us, is it? I mean, most people struggle with that. And I use COVID because a lot of people, your audience, will have personal experience of what that meant to them and how that changed their lives, right? Well, organizations are the same way. They grow up and they develop a certain pattern of behaviors. People call it the culture. But underneath the culture is this kind of collective psychic DNA, this kind of rules or an operating system that defines how we collectively respond to events, right? And back in HP, the order processing department responded to taking orders as their highest priority. And they used to say, when customers call, it's an interruption to me being able to do my job, right? That's a pattern. Now I come along and say, no, answering the customer's call is
Part of the
is what your
job.
job's about, right? Um, but I have to work on changing that pattern of behavior. But most companies think of changing patterns of behavior by simply establishing new KPIs, new goals. You give it to the team, and off you go. But people don't change like that.
Right.
So again, our work is understanding this concept of the psychic DNA and the collective behavior patterns and build that into the strategy execution plan, not just develop the plan and set the goals and assign responsibilities and accountability and assume that's all you have to do. You have to acknowledge that we have a pattern of behaviors that we do that we have to address. And traditional change management programs typically don't get to that level of collective mindset changing. And that's the work that we do a lot of.
So typically the clientele that you get, the companies that come looking to you and going, hey, we need help or we need advice. What is the typical type of organization or company that comes to you? And then what's the first few things you do with them?
Wow, that's so typical companies I like to work with that I attract and I enjoy working with are companies typically in the say 50 to 500 employee range, usually around 100 to 200 employee range. That's sort of my ideal client. What do I do with and typically the leader of that company has recognized that what he's doing is good but not sufficient. I'll give you an example. Most companies have some form of strategy execution system in place. So it could be the entrepreneur operating system, EOS, or scaling up, or metronomics, or a balanced scorecard. Or these are systems that have been developed over the years. One-page business plan is another one that allow you to be very explicit about what you're trying to accomplish, what the goals are, who's responsible for it, and a way of tracking that on a regular basis, whether it's with a dashboard or with regular meetings or a combination of the two. And that's the way they think about establishing strategy. So the first thing we do is we take a look at what they have in place. If they don't have it, of course, we have to install that because without some sort of system, you can't manage it. But then we began to dig a little deeper. Right? So, for example, I mentioned about setting guidelines. When I was at HP, I was very clear about why we exist, not at the doing level, but at the meaning and purpose level. And you hear a lot of people talking about that element now. So it's a very important element because it gives the context for making those decisions that we want people to make on their own.
Right.
Without that, they have to depend on somebody else making the decisions. So as a leader, I have to make sure, and as a consultant, I want to make sure the leaders are very clear about why we exist and what is this collective all about? Who are we as a living entity? What's our character? If we're a living entity and we're operating in the world, character is a very important element, not just values that are based on the wall, but something more meaningful. So we try to start to articulate that we call it the strategic compass, the guiding compass that's going to guide all these people who are going to make decisions. The other thing we begin to look at is what is the level of maturity of the organization to actually take on these responsibilities? As I said, you can't delegate into the void.
Right.
And then we build into the execution process, the developmental aspect of it. If you look at the way most organizations run, people are there to produce the results the organization needs. Well, that's a nice way to view a good component. It's plugged into the machine to produce the results it's intended to produce. But if we want to develop people like a teenager that we want to make sure he grows or she grows into a healthy adult, we got to do other things than just tell them how they should behave. We got to help them think through it, right? And so we look at not just using people to get results. We understand that if they were already capable of getting results, we'd be producing. So there's a developmental aspect. So we use the results to develop the capability and maturity of the people. So those, again, we're shifting the mindset of the leaders for understanding their goal is not just to develop the strategy, communicate it, set the goals, and assign responsibility. Their goal is to use the strategy as the execution of the strategy as the vehicle to develop the people, so they're more you increase the capacity to execute, which allows you to go for better goals. And so you create this kind of virtuous cycle that keeps getting more and more capable to operate on its own. And that's the goal that we want to focus on. So that's the way we change the engagement, is to keep that focus. And then we use all the same tools of training and coaching. We teach leaders how to be a coach as well as a consultant to their people. So we call it actually leader as coach-sultant. So yeah, that's the way we engage clients.
So when you jump into when you bring your team into these corporations and companies, not only do you work with the upper management and the group, the executive group, do you also kind of communicate and engage with the staff as well and the people?
We will, but mostly what we do is train the leaders how to work with the staff and people in a new way because,
Mhm.
they can hire us, but that's way too much money for them to spend.
And then also,
And
like, is it something that's an ongoing thing? Is this usually
yeah,
a few months process, a few year process?
it's a few year process because you're developing people, right? You we develop leaders to be good developers of people so they can execute more effectively. That's
Mm.
that's the whole gambit. And I've actually had to if an organization, if a leader isn't committed to producing certain results, hiring me is a waste of time because if I'm all about helping them achieve the results. So when we engage, we become very clear, what are we trying to accomplish? What are the goals we want? And we usually set them into, 60, 90, 120-day cycles. Um, and say, okay, this is what we want to achieve. And then we begin developing the leadership team, developing the process of how they view the dashboard, if you will, to reflect on, okay, how do we develop the people who aren't getting this? So we integrate the development of people with the execution. That's the key to the whole thing. And we typically leaders don't change overnight any more than people do. So it usually takes a few years to get that whole reframing in place. But we really start to produce results within the first 90 to 120 days. You could
So,
really begin to see a shift.
so within the first 90 to 100 days, are there certain other measures that you could actually track? Like, oh, you're seeing revenue increase or you're seeing expenses going down and stuff like that too. So typically,
But
what do people get?
those are the things we look for, whether it's executing certain programs or Uh, typically, if you think about expenses going down or revenue going up, there's programs in place to achieve that. For instance, if I want to increase revenues, I might have a new product line I'm releasing, right? That's going to give me the revenue production. So how are we releasing that product line? Those are the things we begin to look at. So we know that revenue production happens over a long time. If I'm going to introduce a new product line, it's not going to produce revenue in the next 30 days, right? It's going to build over time. So we want to make sure we're on track, and that's what we're looking for is defining what you might call the leading indicators of the long-term success. Same thing with expense reduction. I got a plan to reduce expenses, but that might entail implementing an ERP system, or in today's world, it might entail implementing an AI tool, right? Or might be doing some process improvement and some lean operations. These are programs intended to reduce expenses. So how well are we implementing those programs? And those are the results we're looking for. And we track. We become very good well, we help leaders become very good at tracking the leading indicators and knowing when to insert a change in what they're doing because the leading indicators is off. We don't wait 9 months to say, "Oh, look what we did," and yes, we achieved the results. Because by the time I said 9 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months goes by, it's already too late to make a change, right? You either made it or you didn't make it. We spend a lot of time on understanding what those leading indicators, and a lot of those leading indicators are behavioral aspects that we look at. What is the interaction between the silos? Are we breaking that down, right?
Right.
So we want to measure that as well because that's a strong indicator to how things are going. That's just one example of a behavioral indicator.
Right. No, you mentioned AI in that last answer there.
I
What do you
had to.
see?
Everybody's talking about AI today.
Exactly. So what do you see as the impact of AI in your industry and in other companies? And also, is it true that a lot of jobs are going to be gone because of it?
You know, every time somebody asks me that, I have to reflect on the number of times I've dealt with new technologies being added into the equation.
Mhm.
Um, I think the problem with AI and the way people are viewing it is because we're stuck in this paradigm of employees are component parts to the machine. Now, my job as a leader is to enhance the ability of the machine to operate more efficiently. And I have a new tool, whether it's AI today
Mm.
or desktop to computers back in the 80s or internet when that came out, um, or robotics. I mean, you take any new technology, the thought process is, oh, I've got a better component. I don't have to worry about the robot's emotions. I don't have to worry about AI's emotions, right? So the thinking is, oh, I'm just going to replace one component with a better component. That's the fallacy. We never do, right? Um, Business is done by people. I don't care how how efficient we make it. Business is done by people. People interacting with people. There's an old saying in sales that I learned back in my HP days. Uh, People buy from people, right? And there's that whole experience and relationship component that I don't think will ever go away. But that doesn't diminish the importance of AI. So, what if leaders viewed, AI as not a tool to replace people, but what tools for humanity has always been is how do we enhance our efforts as people to contribute better to the things we want to do? So I use AI all the time. I mean, it's really been a boon to my industry as a consultant. I can get work done faster. I can analyze information faster. I can produce PowerPoint slides better. I can organize a new training faster. I can do lots of things faster, right? But it doesn't take away the importance of my experience, my thought process, my judgment, my ability to relate to customers. That's the value added. So I have more time available to do the value added stuff. So what we should be looking at, and I remember this back in the days of desktop computers. It's not there to replace people or replace the mainframe computers. It's there to enhance everybody's ability to contribute more value. So the question for leaders is not how do I replace these people and eliminate them? It's how do I use this tool to enhance what they can contribute even more?
Right.
And that's a win-win for everybody now, right? That's a win-win for the organization. I, as an employee, get to do more value contribution, less mundane work. Now, are there jobs that are going to be eliminated by it? Of course there are. Farmers had a plow, right? And now they have a caterpillar. Are there jobs that got eliminated by it? Of course there were. Buggy whip people, people who make buggy whips and carriages, they had to face a big change in their environment, right?
Right.
It's a never-ending journey. So I don't see AI as a big threat. What's different about AI is it's not freeing us up from manual labor. It's freeing us up from cognitive labor. It's making us think faster and more effectively if we use it right. There's always the worry, like with any tool, we'll lose, we'll get lazy and rely on the tool inappropriately, but
Mhm.
eventually we learn its limitations and we step back in. So I'm very optimistic and very positive about it. And yes, we will go through a period of chaos and turmoil. If we had a different mindset and didn't see the organization as a machine, we'd probably move through this process much faster.
Mm.
Um,
Very, very well said, and I totally agree with the insight. And again, I love how you reframe things or look
yeah,
at things at a different perspective to be more beneficial to the organization.
yeah,
Um, you, uh, is there any truth to this statement? Leaders are born.
no, yes and no.
Of
But
course.
some people have a natural tendency towards relationship, towards caring. Um, some people are more willing to take risks. I mean, we talked about me leaving HP. That's when you become um, an entrepreneur, if you will, you're on your own and you learn certain skills. And for some people, that come very natural.
Mm.
They're much more oriented. They were people who never went to work for a corporation because they just liked that freedom and they were very comfortable with it. So yeah, we're all born with certain gifts, and some gifts lend themselves to leadership more than others. But leadership is a skill, caring for people, learning how to think from the head and the heart are learnable skills. We teach it. That's part of our curriculum, if you will, because it's such a critical component. And leaders can learn that. I learned it. I didn't start off being an effective leader. I mean, I failed initially. So I think yes, there are people who are naturally gifted and they'll step into leadership unconsciously
Mm.
um, and do very well. But then there are a lot of leaders who didn't have that gift and became very effective leaders. Those are usually actually the better leaders, and I'll tell you why. They learned like I did. I learned how the art of leadership, if you want to phrase it that way, the art and skill of leadership. I had to learn that consciously. It didn't come natural. Well, it makes me a very good coach because I know what it takes. I know the problems, right? So the best leaders are those who struggle to become good leaders because they know how to create other good leaders. Um, and I think, yeah, so I think it's a learnable skill. And I think if you learn it consciously, you will actually become a better leader.
So there's hope. There's hope for everyone.
It's for everyone.
uh, what are you looking for now? I know you mentioned you have a book coming out. You also have the Living Organization out right now as well. And
Yep.
yeah, so what are you looking for right now?
Well, as any good consultant, I'm looking for more clients. I'm also looking for other consultants. I want to grow my organization. I want to expand this paradigm shifting view of what an organization is. I want to transform the paradigm of business, if you will, globally. So I can't do that alone. So I'm training other consultants, and I'm looking for new consultants. I'm looking for new clients. And I'm looking for anybody who wants to collaborate, that's interested in understanding that 70%. I mean, here's the situation we have in society. Things are moving very rapidly. Companies are failing at 70% of companies are not achieving their goals the way they want to. 70% of employees are disengaged, so not very many are happy at doing what they do. And more and more leaders, there was a statistic that I saw, a study I saw done recently that 68% of leaders go home stressed and then emotionally exhausted at the end of the day because of the pressures on them and they're having a more difficult time doing it. So leaders aren't winning, companies aren't winning, employees aren't winning. It's an untenable situation. We have to change that in our society, and that's what my life is committed to. So anybody that wants to help, uh, anybody that wants to bring me on the podcast, anybody that wants to give me a speaking opportunity, anything along those lines and any company, any leader that really understands what I'm talking about and wants some help doing it, I'd love to talk to them.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. What's one thing that you would like everybody to remember you for?
Remember me for?
A message, whatever it is.
I would love leaders to understand that shifting the paradigm changes everything. Thinking
Mm.
of an organization through the different lens. You talked about how I often reframed it throughout this conversation. I would love for them to learn how powerful they can be by shifting the role of leadership, learn to lead from the head and the heart, and use the results they have from the organization needs to produce as the vehicle to develop the people so the people can do more and the leader has to do less.
Great words to live by. Before I let you go, I got quick five rapid fire questions for you. Give me the
Oh
first
my
thing that
God,
comes to
I
mind.
love it. Go
All
ahead.
right. So you're stranded on a deserted island, one food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence. You'll still be healthy.
Say that again. What's
One food to eat for the rest of your
oh
life, no consequence. You'll still be healthy. What would that be?
um well, my favorite food, believe it or not, is anything with mayonnaise in it. So
Jars of
I'll just have to say
mayonnaise.
mayonnaise. My wife says I mainline mayonnaise, you know. So.
Wow, that's the first I've ever got that answer. Jars and jars of mayonnaise. But anyways, you're on a road trip, hours on end, one song to listen to on repeat. What would that be?
Um, Nail Diamonds. I'm trying to remember the name of it now. It's not coming to me. It's uh, uh I Said I Am, I think it is. It's a Neil Diamond song. I can't remember the title, but yeah, it's just the story of my life.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Hollywood calls and goes, "Hey, Norman, we love your story. Very inspirational, very motivational. We would love to do a biopic of you. Who would you cast to play you?"
Oh my God. I'm not really great with actors' names. The guy who played Abraham Lincoln, God, I can't think of his name. Uh, his name's not coming to me. I can see his face.
You know, I
Something.
remember, I remember that person, but I don't remember his name either. But anyway,
There
regardless, he shows up at your door and he goes,
you
"Hey,
go.
I got casted to play you. Let's hang out. Let's have some fun." And you go, "No worries. I got the entire night planned out. Let's go." What would that look like? Where are you taking them? What are you guys doing?
Um, a walk along the beach.
Awesome. Nice and calm. Give me a number from 1 to 5.
3.
1, 2, 3. So the word is mud flaps. All right.
Mud fl-
So if you had to use mud flaps as a metaphor for success, how is success like mud flaps?
Prevent all the crap that comes into your life from getting all over your life.
Nicely done. So that's how success is like mud flaps. Once again, thank you very much for your time, your stories, your
This is fun.
wisdom, and any final words from you, and also what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me. This has been delightful. I loved your 5 rapid fire questions. It kind of threw me a lot, but it was fun. They can reach me at NWOLFE at quantumleaders.com, NWolf at quantumleaders.com, or on LinkedIn if they can find me on LinkedIn, Norman Wolf.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you. So everybody out there, if you're looking to learn more about leadership, learn more about how your organization is actually a living organism, reach out to Norman, pick up his book, wait for his second book coming out, and I'm sure it's going to be a lot of great content in there as well. If you're an organization looking to expand, increase productivity and all that kind of stuff, obviously Norman's your guy as well. So reach out to him. Once again, thank you very much, Norman. I'm Fong. Until next time, today is the day to lock your peak potential. We'll see you later.